Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest this week is Eric Danetz. He's the president and founder of Spencer Grace Advisors, a consultancy helping organizations navigate change and achieve growth. Previously, he was the global chief revenue officer at Reuters, overseeing global sales and customer success. He's also served as the chief business officer at AccuWeather and SBP and GM at Time Inc. International, where he managed a portfolio of 90 brands in 170 countries. Let me get that right. He's held executive roles at Fortune, Money, Alloy, Digital, Newsweek, Daily Beast, CBS Interactive, CNET, and more. He's been a board member for the IAB, Video Byte, The Block, and Silicon Alley Sports. And finally, he's the proud father of two, one of which I just learned is a new driver. Congratulations. He's an avid traveler, animal lover, and racket sports enthusiast. He is also my good friend who I've known, 10 years? Over?
Long time. At least a
long
decade.
time.
Yep.
Exactly. Welcome to my show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to see you, and especially to have a chat around a lot of different topics. It's always exciting. So thanks again.
Oh yeah. We're gonna move fast and furious here, man. And I'm really excited to rock and roll. I know you and I talk about this a lot off the air, if you will, and that's leadership, and specifically the impact of strong leadership. Mm-hmm. And to me, that word, I want to start with that one. There's an operative word in there, strong. And when I hear that in the context of leadership, I kind of look at it as half full, half empty, meaning strong can be not necessarily a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. At least that's how I look at it. So when you hear the term strong leadership, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think of somebody who has an understanding and encompassing of what leadership actually means. You have people who are managers, people who manage people, and then you have leaders. Leaders are individuals who actually inspire people. They show you a path. They give you inspiration, and they allow you to aspire to be the person who you want to be, in addition to contributing to the organization that you work in. There's a real difference between that, and I don't think it's always clear as to what a manager is versus what a leader is. And I see it very, very clearly when I talk to people who want to work with the same person year in and year out, right? They talk about that person who is essentially their manager, but they see them as a leader. They see them as taking them into the future. Not only, again, from a business perspective, but on a personal level. I think that's also very important. Leaders understand the human element of work, life, and what you need to do in order to feel satiated in that. And that's at an individual level, in addition to bringing people together in teams and understanding how to fortify a culture of people who work together and want to achieve together. So, a leader is somebody who can encompass those things, and a strong leader is somebody who truly understands the value proposition of the human element and how to bring that into a work environment and how to get everybody to achieve and overachieve as individuals and as a team.
You're providing me with a great segue to a stat I'm going to throw at you in a second. But before I do that, what you just said, this is a really open-ended question, but I don't care. I'm going to ask you because we're boys and I can I can put you on the spot. Are leaders born, taught, or both?
No, it's you're not a born leader. You have great mentors. Leadership comes from witnessing other leaders, experiencing great leadership. It's not something you can read in a book. Certainly it can fortify and help you in terms of picking up the knowledge in order to become a good leader and be a good leader. But you truly pick it up through, you could say osmosis. You need to be amongst great leaders to identify who is and who isn't. And you can see as an individual what impacts you. And, when you're involved or you have the opportunity to be around a lot of different strong leadership, you can essentially pluck or take those strong traits and make them your own. And I, again, whether I'm a strong leader or not, I think of myself as a leader, and I pride myself on working with great people. And what I hear and what I see is based on the fact that I've had great mentors and I've taken their traits and I've applied them. And I see the value and the impact that has on the people that I'm working with, the people who are on my teams. And I frankly get a tremendous amount of joy and encouragement out of seeing people succeed. And when they succeed, we all succeed. That's the reality. I mean, that's the difference too between some managers and those who want to be leaders but aren't. aren't necessarily. They manage people because they feel they need to be strong and manage. But what they don't realize is they're not connecting with them. You can speak all you want, whether somebody listens or whether they hear you are two different things. And if they respect you and see you as somebody as an individual who's going to not only move the business, move the team, but move them as a person, as an individual to the places that they aspire to be, they're going to follow you. That's leadership.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for you, of course, but I can tell you in my experience, I've learned as much, perhaps if not more, from good leaders as well as bad leaders.
Yeah, I agree. And I see it. I still see it. I talk to a lot of people. I've spent my career, and it's natural for me that I love to network and meet different people and build relationships. And a lot of the conversations I have are around the fact that their management is not inspiring. They don't necessarily lead them, and they're looking for that. And they look to speak to somebody who they respect and try and get, I don't want to say pointers, but an understanding on how to manage somebody who is supposed to be a leader, but doesn't have the traits of leadership. And that's a difficult scenario because typically people leave, you've heard this before, people leave a job not because they don't like the job, but because their manager or leader isn't somebody who's truly doing their job. I see that a lot. I have these conversations with, individuals who I've known over the years who reach out to me because we can have a very open conversation, a productive conversation about what you need to do as an individual in order to even inspire your own manager, right? And be very direct and open and have transparent conversation about the challenges you have. And either they're going to, elevate and become leaders or become strong managers, or those individuals are going to leave. Not necessarily the manager, the people who are challenged with their manager, right? And so This is an ongoing challenge. And I think even generationally, it's becoming even more so. We grew up at a time where we kind of stuck around. It was different, right? Where, we were taught you stick it out. If it's tough, you keep pushing, you push. Generationally now, I don't think that that's the case. I think it's more along the lines of you want to put yourself in a position where you're going to have a strong ability to have mental consciousness, to grow as an individual, to be in a place where you always feel as though you're moving forward. I didn't always feel that growing up in my jobs. I managed through that, but I see generationally it's changed now where they're more fickle. They will leave much quicker. They're very open in terms of the fact that they feel something's missing. I think you have to listen. You have to understand the individuals and their personal challenges and see if they can be addressed so that they can actually go to the next level, whether it's on a personal level, a business level, or just in general, whether or not they can ascend within that ecosystem that you operate in.
Well, you perfect segue. You used the term human element.
Yeah.
And I want to throw a stat at you actually too, and then get your thoughts on this. And I read this, it was in a Gartner survey. It said 9 out of 10 HR leaders believe that in order to thrive in the modern workplace, leaders need to prioritize the human elements of leadership. However, conversely, only 3 out of 10 employees perceive their leaders as demonstrating human leadership.
Right.
That's a big disconnect.
Yeah. I didn't know that. That's, that's that hits exactly the nail on the head.
Right.
You're right. I think, again, even you and I, like we have a connection, right? We understand each other. We talk about not just work and the fact that you've been, a prolific writer and somebody who's been in the industry for a long time. And it's not just about the business, right? You know about my daughter because we had a conversation this morning where, as I mentioned, she's 17 today and she just took her driver's test. And I'm going to actually need a few minutes because I'm going to be late to this podcast. Your answer to me was family first, right? And so we immediately connected on that, right? So that sends signals, right? When you're dealing with another human, regardless of where you're doing it or whether you work in an environment that's very strict and tight and strong and has a certain type of culture, or whether you're in a startup where, typically that's much, I don't want to say softer, it's hard work, but it's more culturally focused because you're doing 5, 6, 7, 10 jobs, right? And you got to focus on the culture and building people up. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And so if you can connect on the human level and somebody can relate to you or at least understand who you are, it's going to make working together much less, there's going to be less friction. It'll be, a frictionless type of environment in that they feel that they can open up to you. They can ask you hard questions. They can ask you questions that don't just relate to work. And then that parlay is also, obviously there's limitations to that as well, how far you want to go with that. But you want to have the ability to relate to somebody. And when that happens, they're going to open up not only on a personal level, but at a work level, if you're more comfortable asking the hard questions, requesting the hard things that they need to do, and they're gonna do whatever they can in order to support you, the organization, and the growth that everybody there is really, structured to be there to do, is to build a business.
Do you think some leaders perceive showing the quote human element side as a weakness? Therefore, I can't show that side of me?
Yeah, I do. I see that too. Some people completely leave who they are as a person outside of the office. And I'm not going to be critical. Everybody has to do what they have to do and they have their own style. But I have found personally through many, many different elements in terms of where I work and people I work with. And when you open up, when you give people a sense of who you are outside of work and what's of value to you, it changes their perception of you in terms of being a manager, in terms of being a leader, in terms of being somebody that they can speak to with topics that affect them at work, but may not be a work topic, right? So I think that's really important. And many people don't. Many people don't want to bring in anything having to do with outside of the office. They don't want to share anything family oriented or values oriented. They're there to work, and that's the environment that they want to be in, and that's what they're going to talk about. Period.
Exactly.
Exactly. I can't relate to that personally. It's just not my style. But some people, that is their style.
Right. And people like us, again, I don't want to speak for you, but I know we're kindred spirits. Look at someone like that going, why, why is there such a disconnect? Why do you feel like you need to put up this wall? I don't know. It's somewhat rhetorical.
And I'll give a candid answer to that. It's typically insecurity, or it's typically the fact that they have not been mentored by true leaders, right? They're structured managers in that I'm here to work. And then when I leave work, I have my life. They're completely separate, right? So one thing that has nothing to do with the other. And they don't necessarily want to know anything about the people who they're working with, nor do they want to open up dialogue that's beyond very, very specific work-oriented dialogue. And that you asked me about what makes a great leader a strong leader. You can't be a strong leader if strictly all you talk about is work, because people are just going to be robotic to you. They're not going to be their natural selves. They're not going to be transparent. It's just they can't be, right? So they're going to do whatever they feel they need to do in order to satiate your desire to focus only on work. And their natural inclination is to be a person with you and be human and actually also show the challenges that affect work, but they won't allow you to see that because they don't feel that you'll react to it. Or you will in a negative way, and you'll just not want to deal with it.
Exactly, which dovetails really nicely into this other stat I just saw, which I'm a little surprised it's not higher, but it said as a result of inadequate leadership engagement, 1 out of every 5 employees is susceptible to burnout. Now, the stat I read didn't break it down by dem age, because we were just talking about the younger and millennials and Gen Z and Gen X and all that, who, quite honestly, I don't think you were to add to your point, the younger generation, they don't even wait to get the burnout. They just leave, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's more transient, right? But I think there's just a difference between sticking it out. I mean, you look at careers too. Many people of our generation spent 10, 20 plus years at a work environment, a single work environment. Now that's completely unusual, right? Typically it's 2-3 years and then you're moving on to something else. It's the nature also of how we interact. Everything is more transactional now, right? In terms of even when on our devices, we're constantly moving, we're constantly engaging and doing different things, and we have a desire to do different things. Generationally, they do. They always want to be moving and doing different things and feel as though they're growing in a way that isn't that they feel stagnant in many ways if they're in one place for too long. However, again, if you give them a reason, and I've seen this as well, if you give them a reason or an environment for which they feel they can grow and continue to grow and feel part of a culture within their work environment, they will stay. They won't necessarily be fickle. They will stick it out because they enjoy that environment and they're very life focused, right? They want to provide themselves a strong life experience. They travel, they're very, they're constantly moving to different places. I joke around. Some of the folks I've worked with, like they'll be in Bogota, Colombia for the weekend, right? For me, Bogota was a town next to me in New Jersey. It was called Bogota. Like that's as far as I went on a weekend when I was a young person. Now people travel and they're spending their money in terms of experiences and satiating their minds with different things. And I think if you can do that also in a work environment and provide a work environment where they're going to constantly be learning and feel comfortable in that environment, they're going to stick around.
Yeah. I want to pivot to staying within leadership, but get into gender and race. Another really interesting study I saw. This one was from Harvard, and it said women achieved higher scores than men in 17 out of 19 categories that distinguish excellent leaders from average or poor ones. Okay, that's number one. Now contrast that to just 29% of senior leadership positions in the world are held by women. Taking a step even more, women held 10.4% of leadership positions in Fortune 500 companies. And even more telling is less than 1% of all Fortune 500 CEOs, less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women of color.
Yeah.
How do we change this? It's 2024 for crying out loud.
No, I agree, Steve. I think diversification, and specifically in this case, we're talking about gender and the need for more female leadership. I've had great experiences working with female leaders. I've worked in large public companies. I've worked in medium-sized businesses, private equity-backed businesses. It's always a focus for diversification in leadership, of which one part is gender. But I'm a strong believer, and especially given what we just talked about in terms of great leaders and the need for great leadership, is the ability to assimilate and understand different people within an organization. And in order to do that, you have to have different people in different positions, especially in leadership. And there needs to be a focus on that. It has been a focus. I will tell you, when we're searching for leadership within the organizations that I'm in, we're constantly looking at diversified candidates. It's a big, big part. And actually, it's a qualification. You cannot move through a process without having certain diversification in the type of people who you're meeting with. I don't have an answer as to why the numbers are where they are. I do know that there are initiatives to change that. And I do know that there is a need to do that. And I think we need to continue to move in that direction and address the challenges that individuals have. And again, it's not just gender. It goes across the diversification spectrum in terms of the issues that exist with people ascending into leadership roles. And let's not forget, there seems to be an aspiration, and of course there is, for people to ascend into leadership. Leadership is a very, very difficult place to be within an organization. And your time in those roles is typically relatively short compared to other roles within organizations. And so that being said, I think it is a challenge, and it's one that we have to look deeply within in terms of what are the challenges and what are the issues that create the challenges that we can overcome over time. And I honestly don't have the answer. And I don't know that anyone has the answer, because we're still, you mentioned some of the statistics. We're still in a position where we're not where we need to be.
Yeah. Especially when I add in that just overall, 6 in 10 of leaders in the world are white,
right?
Followed by Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American, and Asian.
Yeah.
Those numbers are still way too off.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any argument there. It's just a question of what do we collectively do? What should we be doing? And it's somewhat rhetorical only in the context that we're on this call right now.
Yeah. And I think, as we talk a lot, you and I talk about transformation and disruption and where the markets are going. And I think given the nature of our ecosystem and in general, technology and AI and Gen AI and the individuals who are involved with developing those technologies, I do think over time that just the nature of how we transcend and how we're moving as a society will change slightly the demographic for leadership. It's a theory, but I think that, as things change and as individuals who are involved in that change ascend within organizations, are founders within organizations, you will see some changes there to the percentages that you mentioned. But there is work to do, and there's work to do, especially in the Fortune 1000, right? In terms of those companies and the leadership there.
And I do believe those of us who are white males have a responsibility.
Yeah.
This is no question. Yeah.
I agree. And I think, whether this sounds right or wrong, I think there's a responsibility around diversification. And it's not about necessarily gender. It's not necessarily about the color of your skin. It's not about your religion. It's about diversification in general, because great teams, great cultures are about bringing different people together and understanding each other and being able to ascend, not only in the work environment, but also in the life environment, right? Yeah. And the more that we do that, and the more you bring great people together from different places, the more you learn from each other, back again to mentoring. And then you can apply those learnings towards the way that you, whether it's manage people or manage your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really what that comes down to. And I don't think that there's any silver bullet or, quick answer. But I think if you head in the right direction, eventually things start to change in a way that's positive across the board.
Without question. And listen, I could spend the rest of this time just talking to you about leadership, but I want to get into a topic you just mentioned, which is digital transformation.
Yeah.
And I want to share, I just saw this piece literally like an hour before we hopped on LinkedIn. And I want to read the title and in the opening paragraph because I think it's very thought-provoking. And the title is Digital Transformation Still Relevant in 2024? And here is the opening paragraph. Has artificial intelligence become the new media darling overshadowing digital transformation? Or has digital transformation simply become a less relevant topic because most companies have already navigated through phases of it with varying degrees of success? It's a fascinating topic, and it covers both the transformation and the topic of AI, which I wanted to get into with you. But I want to hear your thoughts. Just like, is digital transformation still relevant? Let me start there.
I think it's critically relevant. I think the way we communicate, I think the way that we transact, what we do is digital. And so as a company, if you're not prepared to do that and you're an analog business in some shape or form, and there are a lot of, especially small businesses, right, are still very analog in what they do, you need to evolve because, again, if you want to talk generationally, 18 to 34-year-olds do a lot on their devices, right? They transact in their devices. Even when we talk about currency, cash, you joke around and you hear like a comedian like Maniscalco talk about the value of cash and how his father would walk into a store and say, I want to and it was like, yeah, I'll pay cash, right? My kids don't even, that's not even in their mind. It's, everything is transacted via electronic payments. And as a business, if you're not prepared to be able to transact, right? And if your IP, for instance, is not in a format for which it can be transacted against, you have a big problem. And so I've spent most of my career actually going into companies that needed to transform. And, I go back to the newspaper businesses and magazine business. And now if you even look at television, right? Television is in the media space, colossal, massive. And the change in the TV business right now is accelerating at a pace that is seriously concerning those who are the big players. And I mean, if you look at Paramount and the situation they're in, and if you look at Comcast and the ownership of NBCU and ABC and, within Disney, all of those companies are under siege, right? Because their business is changing so quickly and they're trying to keep up with the revenue models. And it's changing into, streaming, digital models, right? Linear television moving into a digital format for which, you and I can select what we watch as opposed to being programmed. And hence the value, the pods or the revenue structure is changing very, very quickly. And so there's a lot of examples. And I think as a business, if you're not moving and not becoming a digital business, you're going to have a big problem.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, by the way. It is still it'll always be relevant. Because of what you just talked about. And that's just the latest changes, the streaming services. Things are going to be changing the rest of our lives, which I know sounds redundant and obvious, but it's the speed at which things are changing.
Yeah.
That's why that word transformation, there's no end game to that.
No. And it's accelerating. I mean, so AI, people talk about AI now as if it's new. AI is not new. It was in the weather business. AI has been around for decades. It's not new. It's just the acceleration of the technology. We talk about generative AI. You hear about companies like OpenAI and what they're building with these large language models and how now as consumers, as end users, we're interacting with these and how that's now going to affect, the likes of Google, who has, obviously had a stronghold on search for years, right? And so even as an individual, if you're not in the media business or you're not, interested in the media business, just do a search and see the difference between what you're getting as an answer now versus what you had to do before, which was get a list of links and then click through those links based on decision making, which typically was, ranked, right? You typically go towards the top, and there was a sponsorship model for which you can pay to be ranked higher up, and so on and so forth. And I'm obviously speaking within a media podcast here, so people understand that. But for those who don't, it's very clear that things are transforming very quickly, and our ability to get information is changing very quickly. And so the models for which that information is being transacted also is changing very quickly. However, We're not all clear exactly how that's going to work yet. So we're right in the midst of that. And so that is creating disruption in and of itself on a massive scale financially. And it has an impact to businesses far and wide, not just media companies, right? There's a lot of players here. And so, yes, the acceleration right now, having been in this business, it's hard to say it, almost around 30 years now, is moving faster than I've ever seen it. And the disruption itself could have an impact bigger than anything I've seen, even from the transition to quote unquote digital from what was, whether it's linear or whether it was paper, et cetera. This is a massive shift again for which we're all going through.
Yeah. I mean, I think every person I speak to, whether it's here or just quote on the street, every CMO, every leader, it invariably gets around within the first 30 seconds about AI in one way, shape, or form. And the consensus that I get, at least among CMOs, is I need to be doing something. I'm not quite sure what. I see my competitors doing X. I feel like I'm getting a little left behind, but I'm not really sure. But I'm afraid about leaning too much into AI. I talk to my agencies. They're using it, but then they have to be leerful of inherent biases and things like that. So I get the sense overall, not that I like to use blanket statements in anything in life, but I get the sense that there's still this reticence.
Yep.
Right. But see, the pushback I give to people when they say that is, you got to be really careful because you cannot stay on this sideline. Not this case. You cannot stay on this sideline too long.
No, you can't. And that's so there's those who fear it and then those who are actually being very progressive and testing. I think it really comes down to testing and being involved. There isn't an answer today, Steve. I mean, it's not as if, hey, if I leverage a certain AI bot or a certain technology, I'm going to be at the forefront. I think right now it's test and see what works. Look what you can do to create efficiencies in the way that you work. And when I say efficiencies, that doesn't mean everybody, when you hear the word efficiencies, means cost cutting or layoffs or, humans being moved out of certain jobs. That's not what I'm talking about. You need to look at these technologies, specifically generative AI, and how it can help accelerate and create efficiencies in existing workflows. And those are real. And let me tell you, coming out of Reuters for 4 years, Reuters is one of the largest content creators in the world. You have 2,600 journalists around the world constantly creating content. You have archives that go back decades and decades, just tremendous amounts of content. And it's being produced in real time at huge levels. There is a tremendous amount of work that goes into doing that. So if you can create efficiencies, you can actually understand better what works and what doesn't work. You can do your work quicker and hence move on to other tasks and other opportunities.
What's something people would be surprised to know about you?
I'm a volunteer EMS, so I drive an ambulance when I'm not doing all of this. People don't realize that about me. So I've always loved volunteering and being involved with the community. And so when I was younger, I was an EMT in high school as a volunteer. And a few years ago with COVID and having affected not only people, but volunteerism in general, I got involved here. And so once a week from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day, I am on call with the ambulance. And every fifth weekend I spend in town in case anybody needs medical assistance. And so I'm involved in my community. And once in a while, you're going to hear some sirens and an air horn, and you better get out of the way because that's me.
I can tell you, as long as I've known you, I did not know that.
That's right.
And that's incredible. And it makes me respect you even more than I already do. So
thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
That's amazing. Okay, let's switch to profession for a couple questions here. What have you learned from being in this field that you think other people should know?
Well, being in this field is very dynamic, right? So you have a chance, especially in the news business, to be on the forefront of understanding the value of information. And I think that's critical in this day and age, fact-based information. And we live in a world right now where access to information is enormous, right? We have information coming at us from all different places. And many of those places, unfortunately, are not necessarily fact-based journalistic enterprises. And so what I've learned in this business is understanding the difference between a journalistic enterprise and one that may not be, and why they're not. And typically it's monetary, whereas you can make money with opinion, regardless of whether that opinion is true, whether that opinion is right, left, you name it. I've been able to decipher that working in some remarkable organizations with remarkable people, understanding the value of information and how it can affect not only what you know, but what everyone does and the effects that come with behaviors. So pretty incredible in how it can actually affect way beyond just the media business, but people, families, and behaviors. So that would be my answer to you.
Yeah, you've kind of segued unknowingly into my next question, which was, what's the one thing about your career that you didn't expect? And I think you might have already touched on that.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to obviously be in a lot of places, travel and experience cultures. But like you just said, eyes open to the value of the work being done by remarkable journalists like yourself, frankly, like people who have dedicated themselves to content and creating content that satiates people's needs to live, to understand, to learn, to socialize. You know, the currency that comes with content and information in general, the social currency is remarkable. And your ability to move in life, whether you're in media or not, having conversations with people you know, you don't know, your family, and understanding what's happening in the world and how you can affect it, going back to volunteerism, right? It's truly remarkable, the people that I've been able to work with and see their dedication to helping others through that information that they bring to the world, not just their community, but the world.
Yeah. Is there a brand right now, regardless of industry, that you like what they're doing, that you're loyal to, and why?
I have to say Reuters, of course, but
other than
yeah, no. Listen, I in general, I've always been a big fan of the Wall Street Journal.
Okay,
I've always respected the New York Times, and they're you don't look at it politically. That the reality is, I also upstarts like Axios, remarkable. I like to satiate myself with information every day as much as possible. And so those are more broad in terms of business and the world. And whether it's Reuters, the Associated Press, the Guardian, Bloomberg, Financial Times, these are remarkable institutions, journalistic institutions, but also on a vertical basis, whether it's Adweek and the team at Adweek or AdAge, the ones within verticals where you trust the journalism and you respect the individuals who are creating that content. I spend a lot of time ingesting that. And from a platform standpoint too, I think LinkedIn, we talk a lot about social media. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn is a very, very valuable platform because it connects people in addition to satiating your desire to take in content and have, I talked about the currency involved in that, but the value of understanding what's happening, not only in the world, but also within your ecosystem is really important. And connecting with the people within your ecosystem. I'm a big believer in being present. And so showing up and shaking hands and having conversations like we're having right now is extremely valuable, not only to you and I, but obviously others who are going to listen and have questions or have opinions. And this will spark or be a catalyst for other conversations. So yeah, I'm a big fan of platforms like I mentioned, but also others that maybe I haven't discovered yet. So I'm always open to somebody reaching out and saying, have you heard about this or read this? So
yeah, no, and I'm the same way. Proud. I'm very open-minded. So because you can't know everything, you can't follow it, you can't see everything.
No.
Final question: what advice are you giving your younger self?
I think I know this. My younger self was more concerned about assimilation and being what I thought I need to be, as opposed to being who I am. And so it's taken many years for me to get comfortable, even in my own skin. And some people will be surprised to hear that because I'm very outspoken and I like to stand in front of a room and I'm very comfortable when it comes to being with a lot of people and being colorful and outspoken. But it took me a long time to realize, like I said, just be who you are, respect the people who are around you and who they are, and, build community and respect and family. I mean, at the end of the day, you said it early on and you said it earlier today, the value of the people who genuinely care about you and care about what you say and have a perspective on you in terms of who you are and some of the things that you're not, and right, who can be transparent with you. And I didn't always listen to that. And I didn't always value the right people. And I didn't always do the right things because I thought I had to do something else. Right. And there's many examples to that. But I will say it, and I hear people say it, be your true self, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is figuring out who your true self are. You'll be more comfortable that way. Mm-hmm. You can be transparent with people. And regardless of what some people think of you, the reality is most people will respect you because you are being yourself.
It's And we have kids. We both have kids, and I'm sure you've said the same thing to your kids as I have to mine. Those exact words, or something like it.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially in the age of social media, where you're around influencers and you see all these different things, and you think that's the right thing to do. But just do what's right for you. Everybody has their own needs, their own desires, and frankly, what behind the scenes is very different than what happens on a screen or what happens, even in an environment where somebody isn't necessarily being themselves.
Right. Exactly. Well, listen, my friend, we are up against it. I cannot thank you enough for your time. I, without question, want to do a part 2, and we will do a part 2. But for right now, thank you.
Really, Steve, always a pleasure. And, I enjoy our conversations off the podcast, but I look forward to continuing our conversation here. And thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend.
Have a good one.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.